And so I'm here to give you in today's video a recap or an update of our rose propagation video that we did several months back. So hey guys, welcome back to the Bluff Bottom Bloomin' channel. I'm finally back. I guess you could say I was on my maternity leave. We just had our fourth baby in early May. So if you're not familiar, I will link the video up here. But we did I did an experiment where I took cuttings in January from dormant roses, and I decided I want to try to propagate them. And this is based off of Jason from Fraser Valley Rose Farm's soilless propagation video. And if you want to familiarize yourself with that, in my original video, which I will link again, you can see in the description I've linked Jason's videos as well, or you can just look him up. So he's a great resource on propagating. And so I thought, let me try this method out. I didn't take as many cuttings as he did, and I'm also not very experienced in taking cuttings from roses. So I will just begin this video by just saying it did not work for me at all. Nothing worked. So if you don't want to watch the rest of the video, I understand, but I'll kind of explain why I thought it didn't work. But basically, the soilless method did not work for me, but it did initially work for me. So something went wrong in the process, and I'll dive more into that here in a minute. I'm going to be potting up today. It is February 19th as I film this, February 19th, 2024. Just to recap, I took these cuttings in January, actually. So they've been in this little box since January. Later in my last video, I kind of checked on them at the end of the month or beginning of February, and I went through showing you the ones that have calloused over and how they were doing, basically. So today we're going to pot them up here in basically going into late February. I'm just going to pot them up into these small, I think they're 2.5-inch pots. I got these from Bootstrap Farmer, and they're actually really sturdy. They're big enough that they have some room for roots to grow, but they're not like super large. So that's what I like about those. What's really cool about these is you can get a little carrying tray for them. So I'll show you that. So the problem with these is that they do not stand up. The base is narrow, so they don't stand up as well. So I just washed one of these, and so these just set down in here, and that just kind of keeps them upright. So I'm gonna go ahead and pot these up into these pots, and then we will put these down in the basement under lights and see if they root. I'm actually gonna put 2 cuttings per pot. A lot of people do that. It's not a big deal. So if they end up rooting, then I will just separate them into their own pots later. So the potting mix that I'm going to use today is actually a Pro Mix peat-based, basically seedling germination mix. I use this. This is what I have on hand. I use it all the time for starting my seeds. I always use a bucket. This is my seed starting mix bucket. I never put anything else in this bucket but the seed starting mix. I don't put compost in it. I don't put anything in there. And that's just mainly because I did work in a greenhouse setting in college, and it was very important to keep everything sanitary. Like if something dropped on the ground, we had to sanitize it and all of that. So I just wanted to make sure that the the germination mix is staying as sterile as possible to prevent damping off of seeds, or with my cuttings to prevent any possible diseases. And so I just keep the same bucket, and I never put anything else in this. Now, I do also like to soil block, so I will mix in some compost, which is basically not sterile, and I will use a different bucket for that. That's just something to note. This is really what I've got in there right now is pretty dry, but you can kind of see it's just a little bit finer than other potting mixes. And then I'm going to be adding, because these are cuttings, I want to add some perlite. So perlite is the white stuff that you see in potting mixes. So I will go ahead and add some perlite to this bucket because it's basically sterile. I mean, it's been sitting in this bucket for a while. And so I'm just going to add, I don't have a specific ratio. I'm just going to kind of play with it. I don't think it's really a big deal because it does drain really well and all of that. So these cuttings have been dry this whole time. They have been in baggies, and there's been no water in the baggies. You can see a little bit of water on top, and that's not inside the baggie. So the baggie's not been sealed. Baggie has not been sealed inside that container, but the container itself has been sprayed on the inside with water. And so I'm hoping that, well, the idea is that your cuttings still have some moisture, some humidity inside there, but it's not like going to cause a lot of rotting or anything like that. With hardwood rose cuttings, you can see a lot of loss with those because a lot of times people will just stick them in the ground or stick them right into soil or something like that, and they just take so long to get going. A lot of people will just stick them in the ground outside, so you're not going to know if it worked or not until later. So I kind of like the idea of this method, is that I could possibly know a little bit sooner if I provide artificial light and heat and all of that stuff. But also, I'm controlling the moisture a lot better with this instead of in a wet medium. So this will be the first time that they're exposed to any sort of moisture, like directly on their stems. So I want to keep everything as sterile as possible, and just go from there. Okay, so I have my bucket about half filled with the seed starting mix. It is actually pretty moist because the bag doesn't have, it's not sealed and it's been outside, but I'm still going to put a little bit of water in it, and then I'm going to add some of my perlite until I get to a texture that I like. It's really dusty. I'm going to try to just mix it in the top because I'm going to be starting seeds later and I don't want all this big stuff in there. So it looks kind of like that. And I'm not really gonna, I don't want to add too much. Unfortunately, we are going on vacation after I do this, so I do need to make sure the roses don't dry out. So I'm going to add a little bit more moisture. So the soilless propagation method. Jason said that he kept his on the drier side. Definitely drained well. There was no I don't think that that was the issue at all. And then I put them in the basement under lights. And I actually saw some growth, particularly on the hybrid perpetual and moss roses. They were showing some really great promise for a very long time. I think what happened personally is that they weren't moist enough. I think I got some great leaf growth. I was really excited. Some of them you could tell the leaves, there was no root growth. So that happens in cuttings sometimes, and you don't want that to happen because you definitely want the roots before the leaves. But some of them, I do believe there were some roots in there. But then I had a spell where I didn't water or I didn't check on them, and it got really dry. I'm thinking that that was part of the problem. I think I needed to actually have like a humidity dome on top of it. I just took saran wrap and kind of like placed it over the top, but I didn't want it to get too moist, but I think that that was my problem. And I also did not have them under any sort of heat. But some of the varieties that didn't take off at all, like really didn't even put leaves on, they just rotted simply from the base. They just started turning black and it went all the way up and just molded. So then it's like, well, maybe I didn't need more moisture, right? So there's definitely a balance there. I wonder if I would have put a heating mat underneath, if that would have helped kind of just jumpstart things. I think that's probably what I should have done. So thank you for watching the video on the soilless rose propagation method, part 2. We'll just say, I hope that you learned something from this video, learned from my mistakes, hopefully. We've already passed the propagation window for this season as far as like semi-hardwood cuttings. Well, the best time, I guess, to say of semi-hardwood cuttings. Usually a lot of people take those right after the first big bloom is usually in the spring, and it's usually the best bloom. And we've already kind of passed that window here. It's July. So at the time, a lot of my roses, my older varieties that I would want to propagate from, they've been in pots, and they really haven't been able to establish really well. So what I'm doing right now is I'm just starting to plant them actually in the garden. I have a whole design that I have in place, and I'm planting them with other perennials. So I want to get those in the ground, and hopefully they get really good and established. And maybe this winter I might try to, if they have some good growth, I might try to do the dormant cutting again. And then in the spring, that would be a great time to do some like semi-hardwood cuttings from them next year. So we'll see how that goes. Anything that I have established, I might try to take some cuttings in the fall after, if I can get a flush of bloom. And yes, we will just go from there, learn from my mistakes. I think the main mistake was that I was trying to keep it so dry, because Jason had mentioned that you want to keep things on the drier side, but I think things dried out a little bit too much, and it just wasn't enough for them to recover. And then I just think some of the varieties weren't going to take anyways. So that is my update on rose propagation. So thanks for watching, subscribe, and talk to you soon.